So in this example, we're going to build a video player and we're going to embed it onto a web page using Dreamweaver. Now this is an example of the finished product. So we're going to have buttons that are going to display different videos depending on which button is clicked. So we're going to create a video player in Flash and then publish it and then import it into a web page using Dreamweaver. So let's get started. Okay, to create our video player in Flash, first thing I did was open up a new project in Flash, and I'm going to set the stage to the background color that I want for my video player. So I'm just going to go with black. Plus that'll help it show up a little easier here on the screen as I'm working. Now in my library, I already have some buttons that I'm going to use to be able to switch back and forth between my different video clips. Now the videos that I want to use in Flash currently are not in an FLV format. Right now I have them in MOV format, so I need to convert these. In order to convert them into an FLV or F4V format, which is recognizable by Flash, I need to open them up in the media encoder. So Adobe has a program called Adobe Media Encoder, which is available as part of the CS suite. So you want to find and open the Adobe Media Encoder application. Now this is a separate application that runs outside of Flash that we can use to convert our video. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag my videos that I want to convert. I'm going to put them into the queue. Now you can go in here and change formats and other output attributes for your video, but I'm just going to leave the default. And when I click on this little arrow over here to begin the encoding, then it's going to default to taking the same file name that I had, changing the file extension and converting it into this format. So for Flash, you want to try to stay with the F4V or the FLV, and F4V is the most up-to-date video format for Flash. So once I click Start, you can see that it starts to encode the video and put it into the same folder that the original files came from. So I'll pause this and we'll come back after it's completed. Okay, so I've completed converting the videos from MOV to an F4V format. And so now that these are ready for me to import into Flash. So I'm going to close the media encoder, and then back in Flash, I'm going to go to File and Import, and then choose Import Video. Now it asks where the video is, like is it on the computer, is it already deployed to a web server? So in my case, I'm going to choose that it's on my computer, and I'm going to choose the folder that contains my video. So I'm going to start with the first one, and now it asks, how do you plan to play this back? And as an external video with a playback component, or if I want to embed it as a SWIF directly on the timeline. I prefer to do external video because it does give me the playback component. Otherwise, if we embed it, we need to build our own playback tools. And also, the embed is generally good for just very small and very short clips. Anything that's longer, it's recommended that you use the external video playback. So I'm going to choose the external video playback and choose Next. And then from here, I can pick what I want my skin to look like for the playback. So I'm going to choose the skin under stop seek full volume. And you can see an example of what that will look like, and you can even choose the color of the skin that you want to have display. So you can color coordinate that with wherever this is going to be playing back on. And then I'm going to click Next. Gives me a summary screen of everything that's been set up, and I'll click Finish. Okay, so it has placed a video and player on the keyframe that I had selected. So now I want to resize this because it is kind of going off the stage a little bit. So I'm going to grab my free transform tool, and I'm going to hold down the shift key while I click and drag in one of the corners so that it stays in proportion. I'm scaling this down to the size that I want it to play on another web page. So I'm scaling the video down, and I'm also going to change the dimensions of the stage. You can see here right now it's at 1,000, and I'm going to take this down to about 700, and then I can line this up over on the side, and I can have space over here for my buttons. And so the height of the stage also probably needs to come down a bit too. Okay, that's looking better. So save everything. Next I'm going to bring in my buttons from my library. So I have a button for my raspberry video. We'll have one for roses and one for swimming. So now to line these up, I'm just going to put the bottom one about the bottom area where I want to align things. I'll move the top one to the top edge, and then to align these equally in between and to the left edge, I'm going to hold down the shift key and select all the buttons. And then there's an align panel that we can use to line these up quickly. Now on my tool panel it's right here, but if you can't find it, you can go to Window and look for Align to bring up that panel. Now with those buttons selected, it looks like that got unselected there. So with those selected, I want to make sure that they're all aligned to the left edges. Now if I wanted to align things to the stage, I would check that off. So if I check this and I choose Align Left, then it moves it to the edge of the stage. But I want them just to align with each other. And then on that Align panel, I also want it to distribute them equally, so space evenly vertically. And what that will do is between the top one and the bottom one that's selected, it will align the space in between there equally. So now I have my buttons, and I'm going to save to update. Now the other videos, we only imported in one video, and you can see that it's not showing up over in the library panel. The only thing that is our playback. But if we take a closer look at how this is set up, I'm going to make sure that this video is selected. And if I go into Properties, there is a section on the panel for component parameters. And there are things that you can turn off and on and set up in here, like autoplay. So that means as soon as this displays, it will start playing the video. Cue points would be if you had, say we had a longer video and we wanted to be able to jump to different sections on that video. We could take buttons and have them connected to a cue point so that they could jump right to that section of a longer video. But I'm going to look, if you decide to change the skin, we can change it here. One of the other important things to look at is the source. This is where the location is of the video. So this is showing you that this is on the hard drive of my computer and where it is. So what I like to do to help make sure that everything is able to find everything once this is loaded up onto the web is to make sure my videos are saved in the same folder location as my FLA file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as, and I'm going to make a folder to put it in there. So I'm just going to put it on my desktop, and we'll create a new folder called Player. And I'm going to save this into there. And then I'm going to take my video files and I'm going to put them into that player video folder. So if I move this into my stage area so that you can see what's happening, I'll open up this player folder. So it just has my FLA file. And I want to move my FLV files into that folder. And generally it's a lot easier if you do this at the beginning, but I wanted to point out, that it's a good idea to keep these things together, whether you started out that way or whether you need to move them there. So now my FLA file and all my video files are together, so that when I do eventually publish this and then upload these to the web, they're all in one place. So now back in my Flash file, So I'm going to test this. I'm going to do Control Test Movie in Flash Professional. And you can see what's happening here is the video isn't here. I'm getting a message saying the connection is in the error state. It attempted to load but was unsuccessful. And it's either no connection to the server or the stream was not found. So that's because I moved the video to another location. So what I have to do is change where this is pointing to. So with my video playback selected, I can come over here to the source, and you can see the source didn't update. It still thinks it's in that other folder. So I can either browse for it or I can type it in. So I'm just going to browse, and it's no longer in this video folder. It's on my desktop in the player folder. So now I can reselect that, and I'll click OK. Now I need to resize this again. Okay, I'm going to save, and now let's test it. All right, so that's much better. So now what we're going to do is set up these buttons so that they will switch to a different video when they're being clicked. So all of my videos are in the same folder location. So what I want to do is to set up each of these buttons so that they have an instance name. And I'm also going to set up this video playback so that it has an instance name. Because when we start to incorporate snippets and action script, it's important that we have these objects named. So I'm going to click on the Raspberries button, and in my Properties panel, I'm just going to give it a name. And I usually like to put BTN at the end of something if it's a button, and that just helps me keep things straight so that I know something is a button versus a movie clip. So I'll call this Roses BTN and Swimming. Now I need to name this video playback as well, so I'm just going to call it vid. It doesn't have to be named video in order for it to work, so we could call this Zorro if we wanted to, as long as we're consistent when we're referring to Zorro in our code. Now to add action script, we want this event to occur when we are clicking on one of these buttons. And when that occurs, we want to change the source of what's in this video player. So I'm going to switch back to my timeline, and I'm going to select the button that I want to add an action script to. And I want to use a snippet, a code snippet. Now this is showing up in this panel, and I can also go to Window and choose Code Snippets to bring that forward if it's not in this same location for you. Now Code Snippets is broken up into different categories, and so I want to choose audio and video because I'm working with something in my video player. So I'm going to expand that, and looking at the choices that I have, I want to set the video source. So we're going to say click to set video source. So I have the button selected that I want to add this to, and I'm going to double click to add this to the button. And when I do, it pops up the action panel, and you can see also here on it made an actions layer, and we have a little A symbol on here to show that action script was added. So this, when you use a snippet, it gives you some information. These are comments, and it gives you some details on how to work with the snippet. And you can see here, this is the name of the button that was selected, our Raspberries button. And what we have to do here is, okay, it says video instance name. And what's that referring to is the instance of this video player here. So I named it Zorro. So instead of video instance name, we're going to say we want to change the source of Zorro to, and now we can put in, now this is loaded on a web server somewhere, we could put in a full URL. Our videos are in the same folder location as our other files. So we can just put in the name of the FV4 file. So here are my video files, and to make sure I get it correct, I'm just going to come in here and copy this name, and then come back here into my code, and I'm going to paste this inside here. So now when that button is clicked, it's going to change the source of this video player called Zorro to raspberries splashing. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to close my actions panel, and let's just see what happens when we test this. All right, so now if I tap my raspberries button, it finds the raspberry video and replaces it in the video player. So I can repeat that for each of these other buttons. I need to get the name. So for roses, again, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to copy this just so that I get it all right. I'm going to make sure my roses button is selected. I go to my snippets and double click to set the video source, and it opens up the actions panel, and you can see it's still on the same frame, but now we're adding another action to a different button, the roses button. We still have to tell it the name of the video source is Zorro, and I'm going to change the source of the video. And I'm going to go ahead and do swimming while I'm at it. So I'm going to come up here, select my video to copy the name. Make sure my button is selected. I want to add the code snippet. So it's adding it to the swimming button. Again, we have to manually change this to match our video player source. And I'll paste in the video that it should switch to. Alright, so now I'm saving everything. I'm going to close my actions panel, and I'm going to test the movie. And I should be able to switch from raspberries to roses, back to swimming. And then I have my player at the bottom here, so I can pause, continue. So I have all my other player options under here. So that's creating a video player. Now, if you wanted to take this and publish it out onto a web page, not an uncommon thing to do this in Flash and then take it and embed it out onto a web page. So when you do this, you would go to your publish settings. You go to File and Publish Settings, and you want to choose the most recent version of Flash Player, and we want an SWF file and an HTML wrapper. So when we do that, it will create an HTML page that will put this Flash file on there for us. Now, if you're using a program like Dreamweaver, you don't need to have the HTML wrapper because you'll probably just be importing in the SWF file. But if you publish it out with that anyway, and you can always discard the HTML. So just to do a quick publish, I'm just going to make sure that those two options are set, and I'm going to choose publish. And what it will do is it's going to keep the same file name that I have, so it'll be player SWF and player.html, unless I change it up in here. So this is going to publish it out into the same folder as my FLA file is saved right now. So I'm going to choose publish, and then if I open up my files, let me close this. If I open up my files, you should see I have the player HTML and the player SWF file. So player HTML, if I double click, it's going to open into my web browser onto a page, and again the videos should all still work. And if I take a quick look at the source of the page, you can see the HTML that's created in here by Flash. And an important thing to note is where it is using the Swift file. So right here we have player, or value equals player SWF. So that's why after you publish, it's also up here, after you publish your file, it's important to not change the name of your Swift file unless you come into the source of the HTML and change this. Now I can show you quickly how to put this onto a web page using Dreamweaver. So let me minimize this, and I'm going to open up a copy of Dreamweaver. Okay, so in Dreamweaver, I'm going to create a new document. I'm just going to choose an HTML page. Let's do one column centered, and I'll choose HTML5 and add to head and create. So if I wanted to add my video player here, I can go to Insert on the menu. I know it's cut off here, but you'll find Insert up on the menu, and then choose Media and SWF. Now FLV is if you just want to put a Flash video on here, but we have a whole player created in Flash with our buttons. So I'm just going to choose SWF. So I need to save my HTML file, so I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to put this into the same folder that my Flash files are. And I'm going to replace the player HTML that was there instead of the one that I got from Flash. So we'll overwrite it. So I'm going to say OK to replace it. And now that it knows where the HTML file is, it knows how to set up the structure in order to find the SWF file. So I'm going to choose the player SWF, and for usability, for the title, I'm just going to put video player. And it adds it into Dreamweaver. Now I'm just going to save my file, and it does add in some scripts in order to be able to play the SWF file onto the web page within the browser. So I'm going to click OK, and you'll see that it added a scripts folder, and it added these files that it needs in order to be able to play this embedded onto the page. So back in here, I can go to Live View, and you can see the page embedded. Probably want to move that down so it's not on the same line, but we'll go back and do that. So we should be able to switch to the different videos. Right, so our player works fine embedded onto a web page. So I can go back out of Live View, and I want to set this up so that the player's on a line by itself, and there you have it.